The top female assassin in the industry is about to become a maid for an ordinary male high school student. Yokoya was home alone, living a listless life, when suddenly a beautiful older woman visited him. She immediately asked if she could work as a maid there. Seduced by her beauty, Yokoya didn't hesitate to let her in. He first inquired about her previous occupation and was shocked to learn that she was an assassin, recommended by her master to be a maid. Alarmed, Yokoya was afraid to hire such a maid and worried about upsetting her, risking his life. He planned to politely refuse her, asking first what connection she had with her master. It turned out they were distant relatives. Yokoya couldn't help but make a sarcastic remark. Noticing that Yuki looked displeased, he quickly changed the subject, asking about her last job. Yuki simply demonstrated her proficiency in a variety of hidden weapons, confirming her status as a top assassin. However, this was irrelevant to Yokoya, a normal high school student with no one to kill. Regretfully, he couldn't employ Yuki. She understood and left with her belongings, while Yokoya felt as if he had narrowly escaped danger. However, he realized she had left something at his place and hurried after her. At that moment, Yuki was feeling lost, unsure of her next steps since she couldn't be a maid for Yokoya as her master had intended. Just then, she heard Yokoya's voice. He was holding a bell, but in his rush, he didn't notice a large truck approaching from the side, nearly sending him to another world. Fortunately, Yuki quickly pushed him out of the way. The intense action left her breathless, marking the first time she had directly saved a life. Her heart couldn't stop racing. Yokoya returned the bell to her, and they said goodbye once more. However, this time, Yokoya felt reluctant to let her go and called out to Yuki, telling her his home needed someone to clean. He hoped she would stay and help. Yuki followed Yokoya back to the large villa, but she was clueless about household chores. She even thought Yokoya meant assassination when he said cleaning. Yokoya quickly showed her around the house, which was cluttered with garbage bags that had been accumulating for a long time. What Yokoya really needed was a housekeeper. Yuki thought she understood him. As long as she could do the housework, she could stay, right? Unfortunately, though she was skilled at killing, she knew nothing about housework and was clumsy at it. Yokoya found her mishaps surprisingly cute. He handed her a towel to wipe down with and then helped her clean. Eventually, they managed to make the house look brand new, although Yuki hadn't been much help. However, her presence motivated Yokoya. By the evening at 7 p.m., after working all day without even lunch, both were hungry. Yuki naturally couldn't cook, so Yokoya suggested she take a bath first. Soaking in the bathtub, Yuki thought of Yokoya's smiling face and felt a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. Meanwhile, Yokoya was somewhat anxious, worried Yuki might come out wearing just a towel, unsure how he'd react. When Yuki appeared, she was fully dressed and helped by slicing cabbage finely with impressive knife skills. Yokoya then served up store-bought fried pork cutlets and instant miso soup. Though all food was the same to Yuki, Yokoya excitedly introduced the cutlets, claiming they would change her perception. They were from a 60-year-old specialty shop, both delicious and affordable, and reportedly a secret favorite of celebrities. However, Yuki remained indifferent, suggesting Yokoya eat it all if he liked it so much. Yokoya couldn't eat alone and split the meal into 2 portions. Then he realized he hadn't asked for the maid's name. Yuki said she had no name, as it changed with the employer's preference. Yokoya, not good at naming, continued to call her maid. This made Yuki slightly uncomfortable. The two shared the pork cutlet meal, but Yuki failed to meet Yokoya's expectations, still unable to distinguish good from bad tastes as before. However, she felt a warmth she hadn't felt before, both from bathing and eating. While Yuki was bathing, Yokoya had prepared a room for her. In fact, Yuki has a name, her name as an assassin, but for some reason, she didn't want to be called the Cold Woman by Yokoya. Noticing Yuki eating the pork cutlet dry, Yokoya passed her the sauce, and this time Yuki was amazed. Was the pork cutlet sauce really such a delicious thing? In the middle of the night, Yokoya woke up from a nightmare feeling hungry and quietly went to the kitchen to prepare some instant noodles. He heard a noise inside and saw a tall woman in a white dress slowly turning her head. It was Yuki, sneaking some pork cutlet sauce. Relieved, Yokoya made a dish of pork cutlet with sauce for dipping. Yuki ate with great satisfaction and then asked Yokoya if he had a nightmare. She came out of her room because she heard Yokoya moaning. Worried he was being attacked by an assassin, she checked on him and found Yokoya crying and calling out for his mother. Ashamed, Yokoya told her that he too had a dream, dreaming of a giant pork cutlet sauce, but woke up just as he was about to eat it. This was the first time he had such a dream. He usually dreamed of killing or being killed. So when she noticed Yokoya had a nightmare, she wanted to comfort him but didn't know how. Little did she know, for Yokoya, hearing these words from the maid was already very satisfying. He often had nightmares as a child, dreaming his mother was leaving with another child, abandoning him. After such nightmares, he couldn't sleep unless he was lying on his mother's lap. Hearing this, Yuki immediately offered her thigh, but Yokoya was so frightened that he quickly refused. The rejected Yuki was immediately overwhelmed by a sense of loss. Seeing this, Yokoya could only muster the courage to lie down on it, and they both felt warmth. The next morning, Yokoya went downstairs and saw that all the trash had been shredded and bagged. Their life had finally started to settle down. However, when he opened the door, he found a small dog abandoned at the doorstep, along with a letter from its previous owner. It explained that they had bought the dog from a pet store thinking it was a Pomeranian, but as it grew bigger, it became too much to handle and was left at the doorstep of a wealthy household. Yokoya was at a loss for words but couldn't ignore the situation, knowing that such a small dog might not survive if left to roam the streets. Yuki, on the other hand, reflected on her own childhood, recalling that no one had ever spoken such words to her. She believed that with a strong desire to survive, anyone could make it through any situation. This was the instinct of an animal. Being saved out of pity could never truly make one strong. Abandonment could still lead to death. Yuki's thoughts were too philosophical, and Yokoya couldn't quite grasp them. He knew that the reason the maid had saved his life the day before wasn't out of pity. Rather, her body had reacted before her mind had a chance to think, a basic human instinct. Yokoya didn't want to argue with Yuki and went back inside with the dog. Unexpectedly, Yuki was afraid of dogs. Nonetheless, she would hold it if it was an order from her master. Yokoya was concerned about her fear and learned that Yuki's master had once thrown her into a mountain filled with fierce wild dogs for training, which left her traumatized. Feeling sympathetic, Yokoya decided it was best not to have Yuki take care of the dog. However, seeing Yokoya so troubled made Yuki feel lost again. Still, Yokoya resolved to adopt the dog, and Yuki decided to face her fears and held the dog. The dog, held by the beautiful lady, showed a mischievous expression and stayed still. Yet Yuki was still scared of its sharp claws, fierce teeth, and piercing eyes, unaware that to most people, the dog looked just like a fluffy marshmallow. At that moment, the puppy suddenly nibbled on Yuki's finger, almost causing her to faint. Yokoya quickly took the puppy, and it switched to another finger to nibble on. It wasn't really biting hard, just itching its teeth. So, Yokoya took the puppy and Yuki to the pet hospital to get the dog a checkup and asked Yuki to help pick out some pet supplies. After the checkup, they could go back home with a leash. Yokoya appreciated Yuki's help, and Yuki found herself touched by Yokoya's kindness. It was the first time someone like him had appeared in her life, making her acutely aware of the distance between them. Until now, Yuki, who had only known how to kill, had learned so much in just a few days from Yokoya. Even if she failed the tasks assigned, Yokoya would not blame her. This left Yuki, who had always been treated like a pawn, feeling lost. She wished she could have met someone like Yokoya earlier in life to know that the world could be warm from a young age. These confessions made Yokoya feel uneasy, and he could tell that Yuki was considering giving up her previous line of work to become an ordinary girl, a thought she had never entertained, or perhaps dared not entertain before. Her world had been filled with killing and being killed, but she realized she could step out of that world and walk into the sunlight. Could she also live in this dazzling, warm world? Moved, Yokoya shared his feelings as well. Initially, when Yuki arrived at his home, he was scared because he had never been close to someone from her background. However, after a few days together, he realized that the maid was actually a wonderful person. This remark brought back long-forgotten memories for Yuki, prompting her to eagerly ask how she could become ordinary. Yokoya told her to accept failure, because failure is normal here, and it's also normal not to get things right the first time. So after returning home, Yuki tried to normally slice cabbage with a kitchen knife. Suddenly, the puppy sprang up, startling Yuki into a defensive stance. But the puppy was just hungry. Yuki fed it, and while she couldn't resist petting the puppy's head, Yokoya walked in. He pinched the puppy's belly and remarked how it felt like mochi, suggesting they name it Fried Mochi. Yuki thought it was a great name. Yokoya complimented Yuki on her cabbage slicing skills, noting she was getting better at her maid duties. This encouragement made Yuki happy, and she bravely took on the job of caring for the puppy, even though she hadn't completely overcome her fear, but she wanted to believe what Yokoya said. Yokoya, smiling, expressed his trust in Yuki, noting how well-behaved the puppy was when its belly was rubbed, showing a content face, unlike the fierce dogs of the wild. That evening, they made okonomiyaki with pork cutlet sauce. Yuki, still hungry after one plate, asked for another, which Yokoya happily made. reassuring her that wanting more was perfectly normal and she could make more whimsical requests. Yuki then really did ask for something. She wanted Yokoya to give her a name, just like fried mochi. While preparing another okonomiyaki, Yokoya asked about her birthday, which Yuki recalled was in a very cold winter, likely snowy. Yokoya suggested the name Snow Miss, as he loves snow for its beauty and warmth. He explained how snow protects the soil and seeds beneath from freezing in winter, allowing them to sprout anew in spring. From this perspective, snow was keeping them warm. Every word Yokoya spoke resonated deeply with Yuki. The codename Snow no longer haunted her dreams, but became a warm name, all thanks to Yokoya. So, she wanted to continue living with Yokoya. With that thought, she smiled a genuine, heartfelt smile. Yokoya wanted a makeover during the summer vacation, so he asked Yuki to pierce his ears. Yuki aimed the piercing gun at Yokoya's earlobe but ultimately couldn't go through with it. She even mistakenly thought that Yokoya was punishing her. Why else would she pierce her master's ear? Yokoya was speechless and reminded her, "Wasn't your previous job piercing people?" Just then, the doorbell rang. A little girl eagerly shouted for her brother to show her the dog, but was surprised to see a beautiful young woman open the door. Rikoi, Yokoya's sister, first played roughly with the dog and then turned her attention to Yuki, wondering when such a beautiful person had arrived and why her brother hadn't told her. Yokoya explained it was because he was worried their mother would be concerned. Rikoi asked about their father's opinion, who didn't mind his son hiring a maid and thought Yuki was just an ordinary maid since he hadn't visited. Yuki seemed puzzled about their relationship. Staring at Rikoi made her shy. After all, the older sister was too beautiful. Once calm, Rikoi introduced herself and complimented Yuki's name, surprised to learn Yokoya had chosen it. Yuki openly admitted she used to be an assassin. Rikoi wasn't scared, but thought Yuki was incredibly cool and even asked for an autograph on the spot. Yuki was unaccustomed to such treatment and signed her name, though it looked a bit different than expected since she was more skilled in verbal communication, fluent in 12 languages necessary for her global work. She had never practiced calligraphy for work. Rikoi didn't mind and praised Yuki's signature as cute, deciding to make Observing the Beautiful Maid her summer research project, eager to see Yuki's assassin side. In the backyard, Yuki had Rikoi hold an apple on her head and did a backflip, throwing a knife that hit the mark. Excited, Rikoi asked where the knife came from. In front of Yokoya, Yuki lifted her skirt, revealing that she usually carried 16 knives, but now only 5 on Yokoya's orders. Rikoi found the bell on Yuki's head cute, but wondered if it hindered her during assassinations. Yuki honestly replied that by the time the sound reached the target, he would already be taken care of. Impressed, Rikoi wanted to repeat that cool statement but got hungry. Yuki went to cook for them, showing off her cabbage slicing skills, but that was the extent of her cooking ability. Eventually, Yokoya took them to a family restaurant where they noticed a poster for a summer festival. Interested, Rikoi wanted to check it out. Yokoya also told Yuki about a stall selling sauce-covered rice crackers at the festival, which she couldn't resist. The three then headed out to enjoy the festival together. First, they arrived at the archery range. Rikoi missed her first shot, and surprisingly, Yuki missed as well. After all, she specialized in throwing weapons, not shooting. However, during the goldfish scooping game, Yuki really showed her skills and even taught Rikoi hands-on. The owner thought they were sisters and complimented Yuki for being a kind and caring older sister. Yuki remained silent until Yokoya bought her sauce-covered rice crackers. They were as delicious as ever, and Yuki stuffed them into her mouth like a little hamster. Seeing her joy, the stall owner gave her 2 bottles of sauce for free. At that moment, Rikoi went out to buy drinks. To ensure his sister wouldn't lose them upon returning, Yokoya stayed nearby with Yuki. This was Yuki's first time truly participating in a festival. Previously, she had only attended such events for assassinations and had no interest in the fireworks or scenery. Noticing Yuki drifting into her own world, Yokoya didn't disturb her. Just then, fireworks burst beautifully in the night sky. Rikoi returned at that moment, handed a drink to Yuki, and sat between them to enjoy the fireworks. After the show, everyone returned home satisfied. Unexpectedly, on their way back, they encountered a biker gang. The bikers snatched a girl's bag and headed straight towards them. Yuki dropped her sauce and scooped up Rikoi, dodging to the side. This was the first time Rikoi had been carried princess-style by someone other than her father. Unfortunately, The sauce from the owner was wasted, which made Yokoya increasingly angry. He thought such people deserved divine retribution. Yuki, thinking it was an order from her master, chased after them by running across rooftops. Rikoi was thrilled and planned to include this scene of Yuki beating up the bad guys in her observation diary. Yuki caught up with the motorcycle thieves. Yokoya and Rikoi took a shortcut. Yuki landed from above, first throwing 2 daggers to block the path, then landed in front of the thief, knife in hand, approaching step by step. Just as she was about to deal with him, Yokoya shouted for her not to kill him. Fortunately, Yuki had never intended to kill, just to teach him a lesson. So the 3 went back to buy more sauce-covered rice crackers, and then took Rikoi home. Rikoi felt her observation diary would be very popular. Yuki didn't quite understand these things as she had never attended school. After hearing Rikoi's explanation, she felt a sense of longing. Yokoya, hearing Yuki's soft murmurs, also became curious about how old Yuki was this year. However, he encouraged her to try school and make some friends. As summer vacation ended, Yokoya started the new school term. His close friend eagerly shared gossip about a beautiful maid seen around town. Yokoya pretended to know nothing about it. Another classmate mentioned seeing her in the library. Then, at the start of the class, the teacher announced a new transfer student was joining their class. Yokoya looked up and saw it was their maid. The family maid actually transferred to the same class as the young master. What kind of old-fashioned romance plot is this? Yuki's current identity is Yokoya's cousin, so the teacher directly arranged his seat in front of Yokoya. When the classmates heard Yuki address Yokoya as "Sir," they were all shocked, and Yokoya was petrified until school was out. His sister couldn't wait to see him. Sure enough, all of this was Rikoi's arrangement, intended as a surprise for her brother. Yuki had asked for help with the admission procedures through business connections, enrolling as Yokoya's cousin, a plan devised by Rikoi, thinking the classmates would accept it more easily. By this point, it was too late for Yokoya to resist, though he was actually happy Yuki could enjoy ordinary school life with him. As soon as the lunch bell rang, all the students rushed out because they were eager to grab Katsuta bread. Yuki was curious about this bread, and even more so after hearing Yokoya say it was delicious. It was said to be fried noodles bread topped with plenty of Katsuta sauce. They lingered to talk a bit, likely missing out, but Yuki was confident in her speed, and her master had taught her to secure her target at all costs. She jumped onto the rooftop, scanning from the school's highest point for the canteen's location. Just as Yokoya was about to caution her not to overdo it, Yuki had already dashed off, her expression that of a girl seeing sweets. Yokoya knew he probably couldn't stop her, or rather, no one could stop Yuki in that state. Meanwhile, the first wave of Katsuta's personal guard had already burst out, all deeply drawn by the Katsuta deli. To buy the bread, they trained day and night to improve their speed and burst. Yet, they were no match for Yuki's speed. Yokoya immediately grew anxious, worried about a confrontation at the entrance, but unexpectedly, Yuki had flown out, circled to the back, and was already at the deli entrance while the others were still nowhere in sight. Yuki even had the leisure to dust herself off before walking elegantly into the deli, ordering a bread and a sandwich Yokoya liked. However, the deli only allowed 1 bread per person, so Yuki didn't buy the sandwich, opting for a fried meat patty bread instead. Yokoya didn't mind just having the fried meat patty bread, but Yuki felt embarrassed, and after tasting how delicious it was, she reluctantly shared half with him and even fed him herself. Yokoya blushed as he swallowed the half, feeling it was tastier than any bread he had ever eaten. Tonight, Rikoi is staying over at Yokoya's house, mainly to sleep with Yuki, whom she has always wanted as a sister. Before Yuki arrived, she even treated her brother like a sister. So to keep Yuki around forever, Rikoi plans to set her up with her brother, convinced that Yuki likes Yokoya. However, Yokoya isn't so sure, noting Yuki's usual clueless demeanor. Yet after she shared her bread with him, he couldn't help feeling hopeful. Rikoi, even more outrageous, started planning how many tables their wedding would need. As they discussed the wedding, Yuki came over in her pajamas. Seizing the moment, Rikoi asked if she liked her brother. Yuki answered without hesitation that she has always admired Yokoya. Overwhelmed, Yokoya soon joined the two in the courtyard for a late snack and chat. Hearing Yuki say she never gained any advantage from her looks, Yokoya felt a pang of sympathy. Yuki then praised Rikoi as especially cute, even without makeup, and recommended trying the fried pork chop sauce, noting its peculiar but tasty effect on fruit. Watching the two enjoy themselves, Yokoya was relieved. Indeed, girls enjoy each other's company the most. Noticing his gaze, Rikoi started to push the idea of marriage to Yuki, telling her she could stay with them forever. As they spoke, Yokoya couldn't help but visualize that scenario, unaware that a black cat was quietly watching them. The next day, Yokoya's Chinese class was about a text on cats. Unfortunately, Yokoya wasn't in the mood to listen and was dozing off when the teacher threw a piece of chalk at him. Yuki, sitting in front, instinctively cut it in half, and the pieces ended up poking Yokoya in both eyes. He rushed to the infirmary to see the school nurse. A new nurse named Nita introduced herself there. Instead of examining Yokoya right away, Nita asked about his relationship with Yuki. Yokoya explained that Yuki is his cousin, which made Nita laugh and flirt with him during the checkup. She confirmed that his eyes were not damaged, locked the infirmary door, and began to make physical advances on Yokoya, even pulling at his tie and commenting on how cute he looked when scared. At that moment, Yuki arrived and rescued him. Yokoya scrambled behind Yuki for cover. Nita claimed it was just a joke because she found Yokoya too cute and asked Yuki if she agreed. Nita then offered to apply some eye drops to Yokoya, but Yuki suddenly showed possessiveness, pulling him to her side and warning Nita to stay away. Yokoya wondered if Yuki was jealous. Nita made no further moves, and Yuki and Yokoya left the infirmary. Outside, Yuki revealed that Nita, also known as the assassin Grace, was actually her colleague. Grace dreams of living a relaxed life on an island surrounded by handsome men. To achieve this, she gathers intelligence and aims to take Yuki's head for wealth and fame. Unaware of being targeted, Yuki only worried about Yokoya and stayed by his bed at night, making it hard for him to sleep. Yuki then laid down too, but her intense gaze only made Yokoya more restless and worried about her safety. Yuki told him not to worry. Even if attacked in her sleep, she could handle it single-handedly. Moreover, she doubted anyone would be foolish enough to confront her directly. Yuki suspected that her old enemies might be behind this, so she was prepared to risk her life to protect Yokoya, who had taught her the meaning of warmth. While speaking, she held Yokoya's hand, causing his face to flush. Despite feeling weak, Yokoya didn't want Yuki to leave him. Touched by her heartfelt confession, his body temperature rose. He thought about opening a window, but Yuki stopped him, saying it was too risky and that she should do it herself. Just as she opened the window, they smelled sauce and noticed it near the gate on the wall. That moment of distraction allowed Grace to seize the opportunity and drag Yokoya away. Now it was a race between Yuki's knife and Grace's speed. Hearing this, Yuki instantly turned back into her cold assassin persona, warning Grace to be prepared. If Grace dared to hurt Yokoya, Yuki would chase her to the ends of the earth. Grace wasn't after Yokoya. She just wanted to kill Yuki, using Yokoya as a hostage. She demanded Yuki come to the school at 2 a.m., or she would kill Yokoya. Remembering her master's words about her hands stained with blood, Yuki blamed herself for Yokoya's involvement in this danger. She resolved to kill Grace, eliminate all information sources, and leave the country to continue living as an assassin, ensuring Yokoya's safety. Yet, recalling Yokoya's recent plea not to leave him, Yuki's true desire was to stay home and continue their sibling-like chats. Determined, she arrived at the school playground precisely at 2 a.m. Yokoya was currently being tied up by Grace for a bondage play session, and she even suggested trying other methods. Yokoya wasn't too scared, and when he heard Grace attempting to drive a wedge between him and Yuki, he still chose to trust Yuki. Grace found him boring, but it didn't matter to her. Her goal was only to kill Yuki herself. This revelation unsettled Yokoya, who had known only that Yuki had been involved in assassination work, but was unaware of the details. Grace then explained to him that Yuki was a monster, a standout even among other dangerous figures in their line of work. She described Yuki as someone who lived to kill, without a shred of mercy, capable of ruthlessly eliminating anyone. Yuki was also known as White Wolf of Snow, the fourth of the 9 dragon offspring, the world's strongest assassination group, which attracted top talents from various countries. It was said that whenever there was upheaval in human history, the 9 dragon offspring were involved. Their formidable power made them many enemies, and taking the head of one of them could bring endless wealth and fame. Yokoya, however, couldn't reconcile Grace's description with the clumsy maid he knew at home, who was just a naturally clueless 16-year-old high school girl. Grace was even more thrown off. She had been observing Yuki for 3 weeks, and who could have imagined that the notorious White Wolf of Snow would be discussing marriage with an ordinary high school boy? Yokoya blushed at this point, and Grace became even more convinced that anyone who could tame Yuki was not normal. Most people would lose their composure in such a situation, let alone chat casually with someone intent on killing them. No wonder this man could melt Yuki's icy heart. But this was an advantage for her. Having something to protect meant having a weakness, a big taboo in their world of assassins. Finally, 2 a.m. arrived, and Yuki appeared right on time. She charged straight toward Grace, who fired several shots without hesitation, only to have the bullet sliced in half. Grace then lured Yuki into a preset trap, and an explosion occurred right where Yuki was. However, as Grace gloated, Yuki emerged from the smoke right in front of her. Grace, skilled herself, used a whip to block the attack, and Yuki's strength only fueled her competitiveness, prompting her to choose a frontal assault. Grace also deliberately revealed Yuki's true identity in front of Yokoya, but Yuki didn't care because she was only concerned about Yokoya needing to go to school the next day and couldn't stay up late anymore. This truly shocked Grace. Using Yokoya as leverage, Grace held a remote control, pressing it lightly to aim laser sights at his limbs, threatening Yuki with his dismemberment if she made a move. Before Grace could finish her threat, Yuki charged at her. Grace thought Yuki didn't care about the boy's life, but Yuki was just confident in her speed. She threw 4 knives, each striking a bullet aimed at Yokoya. Grace had other tricks up her sleeve, but before she could act, Yuki's flying knife pierced the remote control. Yuki was already in front of her. This was the power of the White Wolf of Snow. Grace wanted to shoot Yokoya, but was knocked down by a kick from Yuki. When it came to physical skills, she was completely outclassed. Seeing her chance completely lost, Grace broke down and cursed. Even as Yuki tried to be ordinary, she couldn't escape that world. Moreover, aside from her, numerous reckless assassins also aimed to make a name for themselves. Yuki had once thought the same, but not anymore. She would not let anyone lose their life because of her. Whatever happens, she would protect her newfound ordinariness with all her might. It was only then that Grace realized Yuki wouldn't let any target she set her sights on get away. Yuki was the strongest and most ruthless assassin. This wasn't just about her extreme dedication to killing and her missions. It was because she wouldn't rest until she got what she wanted. She was simply a headstrong woman unfamiliar with the ways of the world. Indeed, after saving Yokoya, Yuki reverted to her naive self, and Grace narrowly escaped death, piquing her interest in them even more. On the way back, Yuki sincerely apologized to Yokoya for dragging him into such danger. So if Yokoya minded, she would immediately leave his presence. However, she couldn't bring herself to finish the sentence. Yokoya then took her hand, asking her to teach him some self-defense, as he too was a man and couldn't always rely on Yuki for protection. Finally, the two ran home together. What a beautiful moonlit night it was. Yuki dominated the high school students in gym class, drawing the attention of all the boys. Yokoya felt secretly proud, knowing Yuki far better than anyone else there. After the incident where Grace kidnapped him, he even learned Yuki's true identity. However, that was no longer important. All that mattered was that Yuki could lead the normal life she desired. Suddenly, Yuki looked his way, making the surrounding boys envious. A volleyball flew uncontrollably towards them, but Grace, still acting as the school nurse with nothing else to do but flirt with Yokoya, blocked it in time. Her interest in Yokoya stemmed from Yuki, wondering why the infamous assassin Yuki would willingly serve such an ordinary high school boy. Grace no longer held any hostility towards Yuki. Knowing she couldn't beat her, she made a deal instead. If Yuki agreed to let her observe them, Grace promised not to harm them and offered 3 months of Katsuta bread. Yuki accepted immediately, confident she could protect Yokoya, though she suggested he wipe his drool before trying to look cool. From then on, Yokoya's miserable life began. Every day at school, he endured harassment from the school nurse, and Grace would make intimate gestures towards him in front of Yuki. When Yuki was about to serve in volleyball, Grace would whisper in Yokoya's ear, making Yuki uncharacteristically smash the ball through the net and against the wall, astonishing her classmates. Only Grace understood Yuki was jealous. Then, as Yuki's shoelaces came undone, a girl resting nearby seemed to muster the courage to warn her, but Yuki noticed herself. During lunch break, Yokoya asked Yuki what was wrong earlier. Yuki wasn't sure about her feelings. She knew Grace meant no harm to Yokoya, but felt strangely alienated seeing him with others from the underworld. Was this what being normal felt like? Yokoya realized from Grace's hints that Yuki was jealous, feeling deeply affected, but could only tell her that this was normal. After staying at Yokoya's house for some time, Yuki gradually mastered the maid duties. She can now even wash towels, which took her a whole month to learn successfully. They spent a pleasant day, and realizing there was only cabbage left in the fridge, a perfect match with fried foods, Yokoya decided to buy 2 pork cutlets for dinner. The pork cutlets were freshly fried today, but Yuki's attention was entirely captured by the Katsuta sauce in the box. Just looking at it made her eyes sparkle, reminding Yokoya of himself as a child watching superhero shows. He reassured her that this was perfectly normal, Soon, their pork cutlets were ready. The old man was about to cut them. His hands were trembling due to age, but the moment he began to slice the pork, his trembling stopped, and his cutting was extremely precise. Yuki, an assassin herself, was impressed and even speculated that this old man might be a fellow assassin, perhaps even a legendary one. The grandmother, not understanding their conversation, learned from Yokoya that Yuki particularly loved their homemade sauce. She told them that she made the sauce herself, instantly becoming a godlike figure in Yuki's eyes. Yuki sincerely thanked her for creating something so delicious. She had always thought of eating merely as a means to survive, but this sauce had changed her perspective and warmed her heart. The grandmother felt pleased by the praise, but explained to Yuki that the warmth she felt was because of happiness, and it was this happiness that made the sauce taste so good. Suddenly, Yokoya's image popped into Yuki's mind. Had she been feeling happy even before tasting the sauce? At that moment, the old man, who had quietly come out, gently patted Yuki's shoulder to remind her of the dust there. His ability to appear so silently confirmed to Yuki that this old man was no ordinary person. Her attention was quickly drawn to the freshly made sauce. Tasting it felt like ascending to heaven. That evening, she and Yokoya had dinner together. Yuki took on the task of washing the dishes, insisting that Yokoya rest. It's hard for Yokoya to imagine that Yuki, rumored to be such a formidable assassin, is actually just a clumsy and adorable ordinary girl. He tried searching online for Long Shengjuzi, but only found legends from China. He considered asking Yuki about it, but was worried it might revive painful memories for her. As he pondered this, he fell asleep and dreamt of the last time he saw his mother. Although she said they could meet any time, she only took his sister, leaving Yokoya chasing after them. Waking from his dream, Yokoya found himself crying in Yuki's arms. He accidentally touched her chest while trying to explain his dream about his mother. Yuki, smiling, invited him to rest his head on her lap to give him a motherly feeling. Yokoya quickly refused, and his phone dropped to the floor, landing on a page about Long Shengjuzi. Yuki wasn't surprised at all and explained what she knew, admitting she didn't fully understand what the organization was about. She was brought into it by the master who found her, and she had always just followed her master's orders. She had seen a few members, but hadn't talked much, as her main focus had been on survival, not on others. Yuki admitted she still feels anxious sometimes, wondering if living a happy and ordinary life is just a dream. But seeing Yokoya reminds her that she's learning to be a normal girl, and she might truly become one someday. Yokoya was also happy to hear this, having feared that other assassins might find them, and Yuki might leave. But she wanted to stay and live with him. They shared their true feelings, and Yuki confessed that letting Yokoya rest on her lap made her feel genuinely helpful for the first time that night. Yokoya, slightly embarrassed, admitted that his dream wasn't a nightmare, but a dream where a hero, instead of his mother, came to meet him. Yokoya and Yuki's cohabitation continues as usual. Today, Yuki is going to buy groceries. A list of needed items is written in her notebook. While the shopkeeper was packing her groceries, a little girl suddenly ran up to Yuki, complimenting her on her beauty, and asking where she bought her outfit, because such clothes are not typically worn by ordinary people. She thought if she could wear them, she might look as pretty as the older sister. However, Yuki was shocked to hear this. Was her maid outfit not ordinary after all? What did her pursuit of normalcy mean then? So, Yokoya decided to take Yuki shopping for casual clothes on the weekend. Unexpectedly, they ran into Rikoi and Grace on the way. Rikoi came because her brother had told her about it, and she thought she should help choose. Grace had accidentally overheard their plans because she had bugged their house. With the two girls joining, Yokoya didn't have to worry about not finding the right clothes. Rikoi and Grace were meeting for the first time. Hearing their conversation, Rikoi immediately realized that the beautiful older sister was also an assassin. Grace liked cute younger sisters, and, unable to flirt with Yokoya, decided to stick to the little girl. Rikoi was also enchanted by the mature scent of the older sister. Yokoya didn't care anymore, and just wanted to quickly take Yuki to buy clothes. Rikoi recommended a store and picked out clothes she liked. Indeed, Yuki looked very suitable in them, but these were even more flamboyant than her maid outfit. Rikoi took many photos as a keepsake. Then it was Grace's turn. Grace intended to show them what mature adult fashion was. It was indeed very mature, the kind that might make someone want to be whipped harshly. However, Yuki felt these clothes were not suitable for concealing knives. Yokoya didn't want Rikoi and Grace to continue causing trouble, so he took Yuki to an ordinary store. The outfits they chose this time were quite normal. If you ask Yokoya, he liked all of them, but the most suitable for Yuki was definitely something like a white dress. Grace instantly understood this young man's taste. In the end, Yokoya, with a generous gesture, bought all the clothes Yuki had tried on. On their way back, they saw a Halloween sale. Rikoi suggested they pick out their Halloween costumes at this store. The other three agreed readily. While Rikoi and Grace were playing around, Yokoya noticed a poster for a horror movie marathon featuring his favorite series. He suggested they all go see it together. Yuki had never been to the cinema for a movie. Her previous visits were for assassinations. This time, she could enjoy a quiet movie with someone she liked. The zombies on screen were very intense, and Yuki watched without blinking. Suddenly, she jumped in shock as she realized what was happening. After the movie, she muttered about how terrifying zombies were, fearing the undead that couldn't be killed and her lack of experience as a zombie. Yokoya quickly reassured her that it was all fake. After the movie, Yokoya bought his sister some crepes. Rikoi enthusiastically offered some to Yuki, and Grace joined in, offering hers to Yokoya, who firmly refused. A girl with pink hair witnessed this and stared in confusion until a strong man grabbed her, chastising her for not being alert as a descendant of the Dayshadow bloodline should be. The girl apologized to her brother and watched Yokoya and the others leave before following them. Yokoya and the others said goodbye to Grace and then dropped Rikoi off at home. Yuki said she would head back early to prepare dinner, and they parted ways. After they left, Yuki looked at her reflection in a shop window, feeling warm inside. She wouldn't discard her maid outfit, as it was a gift from someone important. Upon returning home, Yuki changed back into her maid outfit. The dog greeted her enthusiastically since they had been out all morning. With many chores to do, Yuki let the dog play by itself. Just as she was about to wash her clothes, thunder roared outside, followed by a power outage, and then noises came from within the house. Yuki suddenly imagined a scene of zombies surrounding her, ready to fight, but it was just the chubby dog causing trouble. Following the sound, she heard the dog whimpering and felt a growing sense of foreboding. Then, a strange creature dripping red liquid appeared. It was just the dog wrapped in a towel. Startled, Yuki accidentally shredded the towel. When Yokoya returned, Yuki honestly confessed and promised to repair the towel. Yokoya wasn't upset, and the dog was happy again. After resolving the issue, Yokoya noticed Yuki had changed back into her maid outfit, thinking she didn't like the clothes they bought that day. Yuki explained that the maid outfit was a precious gift from her master, and the only item connecting her to a deceased loved one. It was also what brought her to this place. Even though the outfit was unusual, she wanted to keep wearing it. Yuki confidently affirmed her choice, finding nothing strange in wearing a maid outfit or a killer being afraid of zombies. For her, liking the maid outfit and fearing zombies were just ordinary feelings. Yuki just needed to be an ordinary girl in her own way. Yokoya was helping her find herself, as no one can define what's normal. Wanting to do what one desires is enough. Now, Yuki wanted to try repairing the towel before dinner, knowing the dog cherished it as much as she valued a bell that symbolized her connection to her distant sister. Yokoya then learned Yuki had a sister, and the bell was the only thing keeping the sisters closely connected. Yokoya and Yuki asked Grace where Yuki's sister was now, and even treated her to ramen for this purpose. However, Grace was busy eating and did not pay attention to the information they provided. Yokoya and Yuki then started eating as well. Unexpectedly, Yuki added katsuda sauce to her ramen, which Grace thought was an insult to the dish. Yuki was only concerned about the dwindling sauce supply and rushed to buy more with Yokoya after eating, only to find out that the sauce was sold out due to the upcoming Katsuda festival and wouldn't be available until a week later. Yuki was devastated and had to make the remaining sauce last a week. To comfort her, Yokoya brought up her sister, asking what Yuki would say to her if they met again. Yuki barely remembered her childhood or what her sister looked like, and had only fragmented memories of their parents. The only clear memory she had was of a bell, a gift from their mother, which she always carried, hoping her sister might recognize it one day on the street, though such a miracle had never occurred. Yuki feared meeting her sister again, worried she might still harbor resentment, and would be content just knowing her sister was safe. At that moment, two classmates, Taiga and Kozue, who were also friends of Yokoya, stopped them. Kozue felt Yokoya had many new acquaintances and wasn't hanging out with his friends much anymore. Taiga appreciated Yuki's company, noting Yokoya had been happier since Yuki transferred to their school. Taiga then began to reveal Yokoya's embarrassing junior high past, where he called himself Rage Blade and wore a coat even in hot weather. Taiga also teased about Yokoya's childish reason for not cleaning his room. As Yokoya tried to stop him, he accidentally knocked Taiga's signed CD toward a sewer, but Yuki saved it by blocking the drain with her bag. Unfortunately, this caused her remaining sauce to spill, leaving her heartbroken. That night, Yuki dreamt that the Katsuta sauce said to her, "From now on, stop licking me." Startled, she woke from the nightmare, and by the time she opened her eyes, it was already noon. Concerned for her, Yokoya came to check on her. Yuki, with tears in her eyes, told him that the Katsuta sauce hated her and that her life no longer had meaning. Yokoya acted like a caring big brother, and Yuki told him about her dream. She had dreamt not only of the sauce but of other things as well. For the next 2 days, nightmares plagued Yuki. She had no choice but to sleep with her pillow next to Yokoya. However, Yokoya planned to stay up late, studying for an upcoming exam. Fortunately, Yuki just wanted someone to be with her, so he let her stay. Yuki thought Yokoya was very kind, which made him blush. She then asked if someone as nice as Yokoya had ever disliked anyone. Unexpectedly, Yokoya mentioned his dad. It wasn't that he truly hated him, but past events had made him keep his distance. Just typical family friction. This reminded Yuki of something her sister once said, "I hate you, big sister." Suddenly surrounded by negative emotions, Yuki felt she couldn't stay any longer and left. That night, she dreamt of the Katsuta sauce again. The sauce said she was good for nothing but murder, which is why everyone hated her, and she kept causing trouble for Yokoya and others, who didn't really want to be with her. Yuki entered another nightmare. As a child, she was a prodigy, speaking 15 languages by age 7, and possessing a photographic memory and exceptional athletic abilities. Many TV stations had interviewed her, but Yuki had no interest in the world stage. She just wanted to live happily with her family. On her 7th birthday, while everyone was celebrating, the doorbell rang. Her parents went to answer it, and the dream twisted, because it was on that day that Yuki lost her parents forever. The criminal's goal was to kidnap her, the prodigy, and eventually her sister got involved too. Yuki ended up harming her entire family. Afterwards, she lost her emotions. Her obsession made her transfer her love for her parents to her sister. However, when her sister found out what she had done, she couldn't accept it. She left after saying, "I hate you, big sister," and abandoned her bell. From then on, Yuki fell into a dark world, living only to kill. The dream froze as her mentor lifted her chin. The next second, Yuki was awakened by Yokoya, who had come to check on her out of concern. Realizing she was trapped in a nightmare, Yuki immediately threw herself into his arms and pulled him onto the bed, holding him tightly. She knew this troubled Yokoya, but she desperately needed the embrace. Yokoya stopped struggling, asked if she was having a nightmare, and if it was just a nightmare, that would be good. But all of it had really happened. Sensing Yuki's low spirits, Yokoya gently patted her back, as his mother had taught him. Listening to Yokoya's heartbeat, Yuki gradually closed her eyes again. The next day at school, Yokoya and their group were conducting experiments. Taiga began to recommend the Katsuta Festival to Yuki, a traditional festival of their high school where classes compete for a cumulative ranking. The prize for the winning class is a special Katsuta sauce. Yuki's mouth watered instantly. However, the competition also included academic performance. Yuki had just barely passed her recent exams, qualifying her to compete, but her scores were below average, which was risky. Upon hearing this, Yuki panicked. Taiga comforted her, saying that those with poor exam scores could still make a comeback in the practical competition, though it was unclear what this year's practical would involve. During lunch break, Yokoya and Yuki went to get Katsuta bread from Grace. Yuki sees Katsuta bread as a substitute for Katsuta sauce, so she was truly grateful to Grace. She overwhelmed Grace until she urged them to leave quickly because she still needed to finalize the exam scores before the 5th period gym class. Yuki and Yokoya left chatting about the Katsuta festival. Hearing Yuki's desire to participate, Grace reminded her that she had failed the gym written test by not writing her name on it, thus disqualifying her from competing. Grace had noticed this during the exam but had not reminded Yuki. Now, Yuki was extremely anxious. Yokoya wanted to ask Grace to add the name. While they were negotiating, a sudden gust of wind blew. The next second, Grace looked down and saw that Yuki's name was already on the test paper. With things as they were, Grace had no choice but to turn a blind eye. However, it wasn't Yuki who had written the name, but the pink-haired girl from before. Yuki knew this, and specifically went up to thank her. The pink-haired girl blushed upon seeing them and stuttered that she had a way to win at the cultural festival. Yuki was excited for the much-anticipated Katsuta festival. Today's class competition was a cops and robbers game. The student council had decided that Naka's brother, the student council president, would be the sole cop, with all other students acting as robbers. The council was particularly focused on Yuki due to her suspicious background and her being in the same class as the president's sister. Suspecting Yuki of being an adversary to his family, the president decided to investigate personally. though he was actually just missing his sister. Their class theme was an animal costume cafe, with all students dressed in mascot outfits. At the moment, Naka was packing small gifts while chatting with Yokoya, who just learned that Naka and the student council president were siblings. Naka, fearing she might embarrass her stern brother, was determined to win the competition to gain his approval. She blushed as she glanced at Yuki while speaking. In the cops and robbers game, agility was key, and each class chose 3 participants. Just then, Taiga, dressed as Katsuda-chan, joined them. Their team comprised Yuki, Naka, and Taiga. Despite Naka's frail appearance, she was actually a fast runner. Yuki reassured her, committing to give their all to beat up Naka's brother. The president, disguised as a customer, overheard this and formed a very poor first impression of Yuki, suspecting her of trying to split him and his sister. Thus, he planned to teach Yuki a lesson. During the break, Taiga explained his choice to compete as Katsuda-chan, aiming to make Katsuda Superhero a local mascot by gaining attention on television. This reminder made Yokoya consider whether being filmed by the TV station would be an issue for Yuki, but before he could ask, Rikoi and Kozue arrived. Yokoya and Taiga went to greet them, leaving Naka envious of their friendship. She longed for a friend and was thrilled when Yuki promptly agreed to be hers. However, Yokoya and Yuki were about to take Rikoi around the festival, and Naka excused herself due to other commitments. Yuki then asked Yokoya what exactly defines a friendship. The class competition started soon. Surprisingly, the school had invited a popular idol as a guest. The host announced the rules. If the student council president, acting as the cop, captured all the robbers and put them in jail, the cops would win. Conversely, if even one robber escaped, the robbers would win. A captured robber could escape if touched by a classmate who was also a robber. All contestants had to wear their class theme costumes, which was a disadvantage for Yuki's class since their mascot costumes were bulky and restricted movement. Naka felt guilty for not having heard this information sooner. Yuki, recalling Yokoya's definition of friendship, quickly comforted her. The mascot suit also conveniently prevented her from being filmed. Finally, the host announced the start of the competition. The president merely glanced at Naka but was utterly charmed by his sister in a bunny mascot costume. Naka avoided his gaze and hid behind Yuki, angering the president even more, who then saw Yuki as the main culprit. Following this, 2 female student council members willingly went to jail to support the president's efforts. As the host gave the signal, the president charged out fiercely, catching the powerless students effortlessly, like a human bulldozer. Soon, only Yuki, Taiga, and Naka were left. The sight of his favorite idol on stage fired up Taiga, but before he could finish his line, the president threw him out. The president then targeted Yuki, but as he grabbed her collar, Yuki firmly held his wrist. Her body was very flexible, making it hard for him to shake her off. Anxious to save Naka, Yuki released a burst of pink smoke. In the next second, the president found himself holding his sister instead of Yuki and had no choice but to throw her into jail. Now, Yuki was their only hope. She thought again about Yokoya's definition of friendship, someone you can be silly with, like how he, Taiga, and Kozue were once called the 3 fools. There was a time when Yokoya felt very down, and only these 2 stood by him. He had always hoped to be able to support them in return. Now, Yuki also wanted to do something for her newly made friends. She and the president were in a standoff. Neither made the first move. If this lasted for 2 minutes, the game would end, and it would be a victory for their team of robbers. Finally, the deadlock was broken, and they started sumo wrestling on the field. At that moment, Yuki smelled various food scents on the president, which made her ponder about tonight's dinner. The president held grudges, believing Yuki's closeness to Naka had ill intentions. He claimed she couldn't understand Naka's hardships and suffering, and would eventually lead Naka into deeper despair. Yuki ignored his words, flipped him over her shoulder, and rushed to the jail with only 20 seconds left. Was she trying to rescue Naka? She just grabbed Naka's hand, admitted she hadn't understood what being a friend meant, and had responded hastily to his request. But now she had begun to understand a bit, and truly wanted to be special to Naka. Yuki knelt on one knee and asked Naka, "Will you be my friend again?" It seemed like a proposal. Before Naka could respond, the president grabbed him, and the host blew the whistle signaling the end. With that last move by the president, Yuki was now in jail, making it a victory for the president. Confused Yuki looked stunned, as the TV crew rushed over with cameras. Knowing Yuki shouldn't be filmed, Naka quickly switched her place with Taiga using smoke. Yuki, now inside the Katsuda Superman costume, had her face completely covered and was whisked away by Yokoya and the others amidst the confusion. Though they lost, Yuki didn't care about the outcome. Her focus was on helping Naka and being liked by him, meaning they had indeed become good friends. The president called his sister to go home and publicly declared war on Yuki, warning her against disrupting order next time. Unconcerned, Yuki agreed to meet Naka at school the next day as the festival came to a close. Worried Yuki might be disheartened by the loss, Yokoya found her on the rooftop. Yuki said she felt no regret, but a different kind of restlessness. At the moment of deciding the winner, her first feeling was a hope that the festival wouldn't end so soon, as she truly enjoyed it. But it's okay. There's always next year. Naka has become good friends with Yuki and Yokoya and was invited to Yokoya's house. She showed them her shuriken throwing skills, but she feels she's still far behind her brother. Sometimes she wishes she were born a normal girl without these powers, just like Yuki feels. The two girls, both wanting to be ordinary yet extraordinary, felt a kinship. Yokoya was pleased with this scene, but then Grace, an unexpected guest, arrived and teased Yokoya about enjoying his current harem life. Yokoya denied having any romantic feelings for Yuki and Naka. While Grace was ruffling Yokoya's hair, Yuki accidentally almost threw a dagger at her. Grace reminded her that she was still helping to find her sister. Naka realized that Grace was well informed about the underworld and knew Naka's true identity, and that she was the one who wrote on Yuki's exam paper. When Grace grabbed Naka's chin, Yuki immediately showed her anger. Grace then turned to business matters, planning to return to China for work and to inquire about Yuki's sister, as it was also Yuki's old haunt. Yuki mentioned she only knew her master there. Grace said she wouldn't be in Japan for a while and couldn't spend Christmas with them, which made Naka mistakenly think Yuki and Yokoya were dating. It was her first time discussing love. However, it was only Yokoya explaining. Yuki remained silent, thinking about Grace's mention of old acquaintances and realizing she now had people she cared about and wanted to protect, which made her happy. Yokoya realized Yuki's feelings for him were familial. At that moment, snow began to fall, and Yokoya received an untimely text from his father saying he would return home for the new year, which dampened his spirits. The next day, the yard was covered with snow. The puppy rushed out and frolicked in the snow. Yokoya sat by the door and built a mini snowman. Yuki tried to imitate him, but her snowman ended up lopsided with a body and head that were not round. Yokoya thought her desperate effort to make it round resembled Yuki herself. Just as a romantic mood was setting in between them, the puppy pounced and flattened Yuki's snowman. Yuki was shocked as it was beyond repair. Before Yokoya could console her, he received a call from his father that worsened his mood. He had to visit his sister Rikoi and asked Yuki to house sit. Yuki noticed Yokoya's low spirits and suggested they meet on his way back. Yokoya guessed Yuki might want to eat out. In town, they saw a crowd around a beautifully dressed maid from their house. Upon seeing Yokoya, Yuki wrapped a warm scarf around his neck and took his hand, inviting him on a date. This was something Rikoi had taught Yuki. Knowing her brother was upset, she told Yuki that dating him would cheer him up. Yuki also said that if Yokoya stayed downcast, she couldn't become a round snowman. Instantly, Yokoya felt warmed and couldn't refuse her date request. They continued hand in hand, yet Yokoya felt no inappropriate thoughts for Yuki. To him, Yuki seemed grown up on the outside but was still a baby at heart. As they walked, it began to snow again. Under the neon lights, the snowflakes looked even more beautiful, a scene Yokoya loved, and one reason he enjoyed snow. Although he knew Yokoya wasn't talking about her, Yuki couldn't help but feel joyful. Yokoya, too, was visibly flustered. Why does Yuki seem so adept today? He thought. A few hours earlier, Yuki called Rikoi for help. Rikoi gave her some fashion advice and helped put together an outfit that turned out to be very successful. Eager to see Yokoya's reaction, Rikoi learned that Yokoya had shared some of his troubles with her. He was curious if Yuki harbored romantic feelings. Rikoi, as an outsider, saw it clearly. If she had to rate her brother's feelings at 30, Yuki's would be at least 1,000, but she was too oblivious to notice. Rikoi believed that merely wanting to be with someone was already love. Seeing her brother so troubled, Rikoi found a one-sided love test to measure how much someone cared. The first question was about physical contact, to which Yokoya immediately confirmed. He and Yuki had nearly experienced all listed scenarios. The last question asked if, besides confessing, the other person had said they liked something because of you. Yokoya recalled Yuki's happiness when he mentioned liking snow, but doubted it counted, so he answered no. The result showed a 96% chance of mutual affection, shocking Yokoya. If the last answer had been yes, it would have been 100%. Just then, Yuki returned from shopping. Rikoi tested her with the same questions. Yuki answered similarly to Yokoya, including a yes for the last question about the snow, completing the picture perfectly for Rikoi. That evening, The three of them gathered around a heated table for hot pot. Yuki tried to mimic Yokoya and Rikoi by stretching her legs under the table, but her legs were too long, and her feet stuck out. Excited, Rikoi accidentally blurted out some embarrassing stories about Yokoya, who didn't want Yuki to know about his childish past. He tried to kick Rikoi under the table without reaction. After several unnoticed kicks, he lifted the blanket and realized he had been kicking Yuki's knee. Yuki didn't say anything, just covered her mouth and blushed, while Yokoya also turned bright red. It became their little secret. Yokoya actually has a first love. When he once said he liked snow, Yuki was very happy, although she knew Yokoya wasn't referring to her. At that moment, the image that came to Yokoya's mind was of his first love. As a child, Yokoya confessed to a girl he often played with, but she told him that he didn't really like her. He just wanted someone to make a life commitment with. Yokoya didn't deny it. He had always felt lonely and talked to the girl just to alleviate that loneliness. He confessed because he wanted their relationship to continue, but after that, she stopped playing with him, leaving a lasting impact on Yokoya. If that wasn't love, then what are his feelings for Yuki now? Yet, the two of them have already started sharing a bed. Every morning, Yokoya wakes up to see Yuki's sleeping face and then flees the room as if escaping. It was his own fault for telling Yuki she could come to sleep with him if she was scared of having nightmares. Now, Yuki comes over every night with her pillow. For a young high school boy, this is sheer torture, especially now during the winter break when they spend so much time together. Yuki has noticed something off about Yokoya. He just wants to sort out his feelings, still haunted by what the girl had said to him. Even if his feelings are genuine, should he express his love to Yuki? It surely wouldn't lead anywhere. Meanwhile, Yuki has started the New Year's cleaning, intending to show her progress in household chores. However, when Yokoya came down, he saw a puppy joyfully jumping on him and a mess all around. Yuki was soaking wet, presenting an unintentional seduction. Yokoya couldn't take his eyes off her, the wet clothes clinging to her skin outlining her figure, causing him to flee the scene. Now, he's even more afraid to confess. Although Yuki has gained some human common sense, she still seems as innocent as when they first met. If Yokoya were to reveal his feelings, their current peaceful and happy life might end. He doesn't want Yuki to disappear from his life, so he resolves to keep his feelings hidden. However, upon opening the door and seeing Yuki's radiant, wet smile, Yokoya's resolve began to waver. It seemed as though she wanted him to lie next to her, but how could Yokoya dare to do so? He finally explained to Yuki that it's not normal for a male high school student to lie on a woman's lap. This misunderstanding led Yuki to believe he was tired of her, causing her to burst into tears instantly. Yokoya, flustered, insisted he was not tired of her, feeling panicked and unsure how to make things right. Remembering Yuki was still wet, he quickly suggested she take a warm bath. Although Yuki went to the bathroom, her mood did not seem to improve. Separated by a door, both were troubled. From that day on, any small thing would bring Yuki to tears, and Yokoya felt helpless, trying his best to keep her from getting sad. He ended up being Yuki's pillow every night, but lying next to Yuki meant he couldn't sleep, staying awake for 2 straight days. Finally, on New Year's Eve, after the house was cleaned, Yuki came out after washing clothes, only to find a note from Yokoya saying he had stepped out. Yuki went out alone to walk the dog, exchanging New Year's greetings with everyone. Since it was New Year's, most shops were closed, so she went to the supermarket and bought some roast beef for dinner. Unbeknownst to her, Yokoya was already preparing dinner, making her favorite dish, okonomiyaki, and had also bought beautiful roast beef. Learning that Yuki had also bought roast beef, Yokoya quickly reassured her that it wasn't the same, and they should enjoy a feast that evening. Yuki was moved to tears again by how delicious the okonomiyaki was. That evening, Yokoya was exhausted both physically and emotionally, as his father was returning the next day. He fell asleep on the couch, and Yuki covered him with a blanket. The next morning, Rikoi came over, eager to go to the New Year's shrine visit with his brother and sister-in-law. But Yokoya was still asleep, so Rikoi told Yuki that today was actually his brother's birthday, which is why they usually gather after the New Year's shrine visit as a tradition. Upon hearing this, Yuki started crying again. She hadn't known it was Yokoya's birthday today and hadn't prepared a gift. Lately, Yuki had been feeling off, suspecting something was wrong with her tear ducts, so she decided to stay home. Rikoi went to meet other friends for the shrine visit. Yuki returned to the living room and noticed Yokoya's phone had fallen to the floor. At that moment, Naka texted, asking if Yokoya and Yuki wanted to join the New Year's shrine visit. Although she had just declined Rikoi's invitation, Yuki suddenly wanted to go with Naka and went to meet him alone. Yuki didn't understand much about shrine visits, so Naka explained them step by step. A New Year's shrine visit involves sharing your most important wishes with the deities on the first day of the year, and you can also draw fortunes. Naka drew the best fortune, great luck, while Yuki, seeing the content of her fortune, burst into tears. She got small luck, which ominously suggested she and Yokoya would go their separate ways. Recalling Yokoya's recent attitude, Yuki grew even more worried that soon Yokoya might not need her anymore. Thinking about this made her tears unstoppable. Naka, unsure how to comfort her, shared that she too had times when she couldn't stop crying, especially after her mother passed away when she was very young. Naka remembered her mother saying that tears are the emotional response to sadness, so she should cry as much as she needed. Yuki's recent unceasing tears might have been the release of long-suppressed sadness, which could actually be beneficial. Naka encouraged her to cry as much as she needed until all her sadness was out, believing that one day Yuki could return to her usual smiling self. After crying, Naka took Yuki to the shrine. Yuki followed Naka's actions and closed her eyes, praying to always be with her loved ones. Meanwhile, Yokoya, still asleep at home, missed his father's calls. On the way back, Naka found out it was Yokoya's birthday and started giving Yuki suggestions. He proposed buying a gift to give Yokoya during a moment alone or while watching the night scenery. He suggested it should be something Yokoya likes. Yuki thought carefully and realized Yokoya's favorite things seemed to be pork cutlets or figurines. She had seen many figurines in Yokoya's cabinet and remembered seeing similar ones in a capsule toy machine at the mall. Determined to get the specific figurine from the poster, Yuki quickly pulled out her wallet, but after several tries, she still couldn't get the one she wanted. She started crying. At that moment, a handsome older man approached her, seeing her distress. He offered to teach her a spell to get the item she wanted. The first step, he said, was to stop crying, then approach the machine with determination. Yuki, puzzled but hopeful, stopped her tears and threatened the capsule toy machine, saying she'd destroy it if it didn't give her the desired item. Surprisingly, the next capsule she got was the one she wanted. Grateful, Yuki thanked the man, who mentioned he was reminded of doing similar things for his son. He was glad to have helped and left to do his shopping. Meanwhile, Yokoya had slept until the afternoon until his sister woke him up. He learned his father would soon be returning and saw a note left by Yuki. He remembered he hadn't yet told Yuki about his father and realized he had been avoiding it. Yokoya had hardly shared anything about himself with Yuki. He didn't understand why his mother had suddenly left, nor had he asked his father about his strange expression that day. Since then, his father had been working abroad and left Yokoya's care to a nanny, rarely returning home. Yokoya feared his father's look that day was one of anger towards him. While he was thinking, he received a message from Naka saying Yuki was feeling down because of the draw, hoping Yokoya could cheer her up. Just as he finished reading, Yuki returned. Yokoya quickly took the opportunity to tell her his father was coming back soon and confessed he hadn't told his dad about Yuki's past as an assassin. He wanted to ask her to act normal, but he couldn't bring himself to say it. Yuki always wanted to be ordinary, but he wanted to hide her away. Doesn't that mean he thinks she's not ordinary at all? So Yokoya made up his mind. No matter what his father said, he would protect Miss Yuki. Rikoi was deeply moved when he heard this. His brother had finally grown up. During the siblings' playful bickering, their father returned, unexpectedly the handsome man Yuki had met in the mall. Rikoi had no barriers with their father, but Yokoya seemed to hold a grudge. Before even greeting his father, he wanted to discuss Yuki, saying that although she was now a maid, she had once been an assassin. Just as he finished speaking, Yuki appeared in her maid's outfit, and Yokoya's father seemed not at all surprised. In fact, he and Yuki often mentioned a certain gentleman who turned out to be an acquaintance. They discussed things Yokoya knew nothing about, making him feel like an outsider. At this moment, both his father and Yuki seemed incredibly foreign to Yokoya, as if he was back to that day, alone and disconnected. It was his father who had taken on the gentleman's request, but he brushed off the topic. Seeing his father like this, Yokoya realized why he was always so troubled. He was always considering others, never truly conveying his feelings or trying to understand them. When his father stood to leave, knowing it was his son's birthday, but also aware Yokoya disliked celebrating it, he simply wished him a happy birthday and presented a gift prepared with Yokoya's mother. Yokoya questioned himself. Should he continue to remain silent? Should he just watch his father leave? No, this time he must speak up. Finally, he stopped the departing car and asked his father to let Yuki stay indefinitely. To his surprise, his father simply asked what he wanted to do. In front of everyone, Yokoya expressed his wish for Yuki to stay permanently. His father smiled, recognizing his son had truly grown up, and decided to let him make the decision. After conveying the most important matter, Yokoya felt an unexpected relief. Yuki, who had not been able to speak, blushed deeply. Just as she was about to say something to Yokoya, his father called again, but this time he wanted Yuki to listen. He asked if she had felt uncomfortable since her arrival. Yuki replied not at all, because Yokoya treated her well. His father was deeply relieved to hear that his son was making an effort to change, all thanks to Yuki's presence. He sincerely thanked Yuki and hoped she would continue to look after Yokoya. After hanging up, Yuki mustered the courage to invite Yokoya to view the night scene together. As soon as Yokoya agreed, Yuki couldn't wait, and Princess carried him to the rooftop that overlooked the city. Excited and eager, Yuki had to hold her heart while speaking to Yokoya. Although night had not yet fallen, she quickly gave him her gift. However, the figurine she had eagerly obtained was damaged because she was too strong. She had really hoped Yokoya would be happy with the gift. Seeing the broken figurine, Yokoya began to ponder alone, realizing that Yuki had gone to buy him a gift, and he had misunderstood. Indeed, just thinking inwardly conveyed nothing. Others would not know what he wanted to communicate to Yuki. So he began to tell Yuki about the anime that featured the character from the figurine. As a child, he really loved that anime, and even made his dad buy him the merchandise. Yokoya used to admire his father a lot, thinking he knew and could do everything. But since the day his mother left home, he couldn't understand what his father was thinking. Even now, he still fears being rejected if he speaks honestly. He has avoided this for nearly 10 years, to the point where he doesn't know how to repair the family relationship. But he doesn't want it to be the same with Yuki. If Yuki came here hoping to find a family, then he wants to be that family for her, where they can share their joys and sorrows without hesitation. He asked Yuki if she would like to be that kind of family with him. In that moment, Yuki recalled the scenes of her own family together in her childhood, realizing she had always longed for such a family. Tears of happiness, not sadness, slid down her cheeks. She solemnly answered Yokoya, "I would very much like to be your family." Yokoya finally expressed his feelings too. He liked Miss Yuki the most, and Yuki liked Mr. Yokoya the most. Although their like might not be the same, for Yokoya, just protecting Yuki's childlike pure smile was enough. Yet why did his heart still hurt so much? This was the first time Yokoya felt the pain of unrequited love. Unbeknownst to him, Yuki's feelings were also turbulent, and the next day she kept recalling the way Yokoya said he liked her the most, her heart strangely fluttering.